Hello and thank you for joining us for another installment in this IVR video series. For those who are new to this series, if you want to watch the first video and all the other videos in this series, please click on the links provided in the description box. For today's video tutorial, we're going to learn all about routing conditions. Before we dive into routing conditions, here are a few things that you need to remember. Integral to the success of an IVR routing system is proper workflow configuration. Workflows offer a wide selection of IVR routing activities with which you can build your workflow. When you properly configure your workflows, the IVR system can identify customers and determine their service needs based on the numbers they've dialed and digits they've entered so that they can reach certain areas in the organization. IVR routing activities can either be actions or conditions. Actions are the actual events within the system, such as menus or transfers. Conditions are the basis upon which an action will be implemented. With that in mind, routing conditions are the basis upon which calls will be routed. For today's video, we're going to cover these routing conditions, specifically schedules, DNIS, and ANI. Let's work with the following scenario. On the screen is the information about MiTech. Their hours of operation fall on Mondays through Fridays from 9 o'clock a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. and on Saturdays from 10 o'clock a.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. They are closed for Christmas Day, New Year's Day, and 4th of July. They want to set up the call routing behavior so that when closed on a normal day, the call will get routed to a menu with two options, including voicemail for new point and after-hour support. When closed on holidays, the IVR will play a message instead. During normal business hours, they have two separate DNIS the calls could come in on. Lastly, they also maintain a list of blacklisted numbers that are not to be supported. To set up this IVR routing behavior, we will need to build a workflow with the appropriate routing conditions. In your Site Explorer, make sure you're in IVR routing, go to Workflows, click Add, and under Voice, select the workflow type. Each workflow type offers a specific selection of IVR routing activities with which to build the workflow. For more information on workflow types, you can watch the video on adding workflows. The link is provided in the description box. The IVR Workflow Designer is an intuitive drag-and-drop interface. The toolbox shows the available IVR routing activities. To view the specific configuration settings for your IVR activities, you can go to Properties. It can also provide you an outline view of the workflow. IVR reads the workflow top to bottom, left to right. This is important to consider when you are designing and building your workflow. There are many ways to design and build a workflow. There is no one template you can use. One scenario may sprout different looking workflows because one system administrator may approach it differently from another system administrator. Just the same, it is important to have a clear plan of the routing behavior you have in mind to be successful. When building an inbound workflow, you always want to start with the answer activity. To add an IVR activity, locate it in a toolbox and drag and drop it onto the designer interface. Notice that the down arrow changes to a plus sign when you hover over it, and that indicates you can now drop the activity. For this given scenario, I will start with the ANI routing condition. ANI stands for Automatic Number Identification. It is a service that provides the receiver of a telephone call with the number of the calling phone. To meet the requirement of MiTech to block support for the numbers in their blacklist, I will use the ANI routing condition. In the toolbox, locate ANI and drag and drop it onto the interface right below the answer activity. As a tip, the activities with missing or incorrect configuration settings will be flagged with an exclamation mark in the designer window. To add the numbers in the blacklist, right-click on the activity and choose Add Condition. In the ANI window, click Add and enter the phone numbers. Once all the numbers in the blacklist have been added, click OK. Back on the designer interface, you can rename the activity to make it more understandable to you and the others who may have to go back and review the workflow in the future. Following the requirement, we can now add a play activity so that the numbers in the blacklist will hear a message that they will not be supported. In the toolbox, select Play, drag and drop it onto the interface, and with the play activity selected, go to Properties. Under Prompt, assign a greeting prompts to be used. This is where we assign the message that will be played back to the customers in the blacklist. For this demo, I will select from an existing prompt. You can scroll to locate or use the search field to type in a keyword and choose the prompt you're going to use. Once selected, click OK. And now we have successfully configured the ANI routing condition. Going back to our scenario, MiTech has two numbers that calls can come in on during business hours. To configure this IVR routing behavior, we will use the DNIS routing condition. DNIS stands for Dialed Number Identification Service and is a telephone service that identifies for the receiver of a call the number that the caller dialed. In the toolbox, locate the DNIS activity and drag and drop it onto the designer interface right below your ANI condition. To program the DNIS numbers, right-click on the activity and Add Condition. Add the DNIS numbers, and then click OK. Back on the designer interface, we can now program the behavior for each DNIS number. Similar to when we configured the ANI activity, you can rename the branches so that it is more understandable and program the next set of activities. In this case, we will add a transfer activity. With a transfer activity selected, choose Properties and set the destination, transfer type, and timeout duration. Do the same process for the other DNIS number. Make sure to assign it to the correct destination, and we're done setting up the DNIS routing condition. Lastly, we can now add a schedule condition. Using the spec sheet as reference, take note of the operation hours and the holidays. Going back to our workflow, in the toolbox, locate Schedule and add it to the workflow. IVR routing gives you the flexibility to move your activities around to meet what you think would work best. In this example, I think it would make more sense to have the schedule condition right after the ANI condition. To move it, I can simply select the activity and drag it to its new position in the workflow. Continuing our configuration, right-click on a schedule activity and add a schedule condition. Let's start by programming holidays. Enter in the name for the branch, in this case holidays, and then click Add. On a drop-down list, choose Holiday. Next, we can check the box for the days we want included as a holiday. Add all of the holidays by following this process. By default, IVR will treat this group as an end condition. Right now, this means the caller would have to meet all three conditions to be marked as a holiday. Since that's not what we want, we have to select them and choose Group OR. Click OK and program the rest of the behavior for this condition. In this sample scenario, MiTech wants a specific message to be played back when callers call on a holiday. To meet this requirement, we will add another play activity and set the appropriate greeting prompt, after which add a hang-up activity. Next, we will program business hours. Just like what we did earlier, add another schedule condition. In the name field, enter the name for the branch. Click Add, and on a drop-down list, this time choose DOW. This stands for Day of the Week. For the value, check the boxes from Mondays to Fridays. And then next, we have to add a time for those days. To do so, click Add, choose Time, and for the value, enter 9 o'clock a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. To make sure that these conditions are taken together, select them and choose Group AND. MiTech is also open on Saturdays, so we have to add that as well. Again, click Add, choose DOW, and for the value, select Saturday. To add a time, click Add, choose Time, and for the value, enter 10 o'clock a.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. Just like what we did earlier, we need to make sure that these conditions are taken together, so select them and choose Group End. Lastly, we need to delineate these two conditions. We need to do this so that IVR will read it properly. Select each of the group conditions and choose Group OR. To go back on the workflow, click OK. Because we want calls falling within business hours to continue with the rest of the workflow, we will not need to program activities under it. Finally, on the schedule condition, we will program the routing behavior for when a call comes in outside business hours or when closed on a normal day. Because we have already added the conditions for holidays and business hours, we can use the no-match branch to configure the rest of the activities. In this given scenario, MiTech wants the calls to be routed to a menu with two options. In the toolbox, locate the menu activity and add it to the workflow. Next, you have to configure the menu options as specified in the scenario. We will cover the details of how to work with the menu activity in another video. Once you are done configuring the menu options, don't forget to save your changes. Let's review our workflow. When a call comes in, the first thing it will do is to check for the phone number the caller is calling from with our any condition. If it matches any of the numbers in a blacklist, the caller will be played back a message that we will not be supporting them. Otherwise, it will continue with the rest of the workflow. Next, it will check for the schedule. Is the caller calling on a holiday? If so, the caller will again be routed to a playback message. The next thing it will check is if the call falls within business hours. If so, it will proceed to the next step in the workflow. Otherwise, the caller will be routed to a menu where they can choose an option. In this case, there are two options: voicemail or after-hours support. Lastly, if the caller does end up calling within business hours, the system will check the digits they entered to enter our system. Depending on that, they will be routed to either the partner support team or the customer support team. If you've done everything right, your workflow will be free of errors. To verify this, IVR gives you the ability to validate the workflow. To do so, click anywhere on the designer interface, making sure that no specific activity or condition or branch is selected, and then click Properties. Check Validate Workflow. You know that your workflow is free of errors when there's a green check mark right next to the validation at the bottom of the designer window. This is an important check. This is built in to avoid running your IVR system with erroneous workflows. The workflow will have to be validated for it to come into service. If you get errors, review your workflow. Don't get frustrated if you don't get it the first time. It will take practice, experience, and a lot of planning.
And that is all the time that we have for today's video. As I always do in the end of these videos, I encourage you all to practice what you've learned. Try setting up some routing conditions in your test environment. If you have any questions about this video or are interested in finding out about the courses that we offer here at Mitel Global Education Services, please visit us at mitel.ca, go to Services and Support, and then click Training. Please like and subscribe to learn more, and have a great day.